To everyone present, everyone in the audience, everyone up here on this front panel, especially the people on the front panel. Thank you, Caitlin, for all your work. Thank you, Dr. McDaniel, Dr. Gebert, and Cody Lester for being here with us today. My name is Gary Johnson, and I'm here today because I have a vision of a free America. I have a vision of a country where people's rights are not infringed upon by our government. A country with a booming economy thanks to a true free market. A vision of citizens spending more money thanks to a long overdue restructure of our tax system. I'm here today because I intend to make this vision a reality, and I hope you will stand with me in doing so. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and proceed to the first question. The first question is, do you favor reinvigorating the manufacturing sector of the economy? If so, how would you accomplish this?
Well, Mr. Moderator, I decided to run for the office of president because I truly want to make America great again. And that vision is not one of top-down reform, but rather reform that begins from the bottom up. I will reinvigorate manufacturing in this great country using several different strategies. First of all, we have to change our tax code. The plan that I have presented includes a 15% flat rate for businesses, a massive reduction when compared to the 40% flat tax rate that businesses have to pay today, which also will reduce the 76,000 some odd pages that are currently in the tax code. These reductions would result in economic growth and job creation that we have not seen the likes of which since the Reagan years. Now, my plan is in stark contrast to Secretary Clinton's plan, which actually increases the taxes that most businesses and individuals have to pay. A surefire strategy to make American businesses less competitive in the global marketplace and far more difficult to start at home. But beyond taxes, we also have to implement a rational regulatory framework that stops penalizing small American businesses and depressed parts of the economy, like the coal country in Kentucky, for example. By decreasing the amount of regulations that businesses actually have to comply with, we will encourage growth instead of increasing the burdensome regulatory framework our businesses already suffer under. But most importantly, we are going to protect the jobs that I will create as president by encouraging domestic trade and job creation instead of helping companies take their business and their trade overseas while unemployed Americans suffer at home. Manufacturing is critical to the promotion of American greatness, and I will do everything in my power as President of the United States to encourage its health and well-being.
I believe in strengthening American manufacturing through a $10 billion investment called Make It in America. These partnerships will bring together works and labor, business, universities, community colleges, and government at every level to harness the strength of the manufacturing communities across America. Additionally, I will revitalize the hardest hit manufacturing communities by creating tax incentives to encourage investment in communities that have faced or are about to face significant manufacturing job losses. Further, I'll prevent countries like China from abusing global trade rules and reject trade agreements that don't meet our high standards. I will say no to the Trans-Pacific Partnership that does not meet my high standard of raising wages and embracing national security. Finally, we'll crack down on these companies trying to send jobs and earnings overseas and create incentives for companies to bring jobs back to the United States of America.
I do not believe that our government needs to subsidize or otherwise interfere with the manufacturing sector of the economy. I believe this is an issue that the free market will work out naturally. If products can be manufactured cheaper in places like China and Mexico and then imported, I see that as nothing but a benefit to the United States. Lower prices on goods will ultimately lead to more spending, and I believe that spending is the best way to stimulate our economy. If our concern turns to outsourcing of jobs, I have an answer for that as well. High taxes are the reason that businesses continue to turn to outsourcing. The tax plan that I'm proposing would eliminate a business tax, both large and small. I'm also planning to eliminate the income tax, and in exchange, I will propose a fair consumption tax on all consumed goods, so that the people of this country will have more money in their pockets to spend on products made by our businesses. This combination of reducing taxes and increasing consumption of product will incentivize businesses to operate in the U.S. without political pressure of any kind. This will not only solve the problem of outsourcing, but stimulate our economy and create thousands of jobs for us, the American people, right here at home.
Okay, we will now proceed to the second question. What are your policies regarding alternative energy?
I firmly believe that America cannot be great if we don't have energy to run on. And that's why, from the very beginning of my campaign, I've made it very clear. We need a new market-driven system to provide us with clean energy solutions for the future. My strategic goals are as follows. First of all, we need to make America energy dependent. That means no more dependence on OPEC or our enemies in the Middle East for the lifeblood of this nation. My plan to get us to energy independence includes utilizing our domestic oil and natural gas reserves, valued at over $50 trillion. Unlocking our wealth of natural resources will create lots of new jobs and revenue within our economy, as well as providing cheap and abundant energy. At the same time, we have to encourage the usage of natural gas and other domestic American energy sources, clean and fossil, while being conscious of our emissions and our environmental footprint. But perhaps most importantly, I will repeal the job-killing executive actions directed by the previous administration that target the domestic energy market and let hardworking Americans produce energy here at home, resulting in a competitive energy market with higher wages and overall lower cost of energy. I want to make America great again, and that means that we cannot be great if we are dependent on our enemies for oil. We outlaw drilling our own resources and refuse to let the energy market grow here at home. We have to let people with clever new clean energy solutions come forward and present their ideas in a competitive marketplace instead of shutting them down with overreaching executive action. My plan will create billions of dollars in wages, thousands of new jobs, and abundant energy for everyone, which consequently means cheaper energy. And who doesn't like paying less money for a tank of gas?
Unlike Donald Trump, I have pledged to power at least half of the nation's energy needs with renewable resources by 2030, with a specific focus on solar energy. By the end of my presidential term, I promise to have more than 500 million solar panels installed across our country. I hope to increase the output of solar energy by 700% by the end of the decade. Human activity is the primary cause of global climate change. Further, I support the investment in clean, renewable energy over that of fracking. I also object to the Keystone XL pipeline project and believe that we should invest in renewable resources instead. I have supported the Paris Agreement to combat climate change and believe that it is our responsibility to address our environmental needs. You don't have to be a scientist to take on this urgent challenge that threatens us all. You must be willing to act. Thank you.
My environmental policy is that I have no policy. I acknowledge that climate change is a harm. I acknowledge that it exists, and it is a man-made harm. However, I do not believe it is the proper role of a just government to interfere with the energy market. That is not to say I'm against alternative energy. Quite the opposite, I am very in favor. However, I do not believe that it is the government that should play a hand. Technological innovation is the way to further renewable energy development, and this will come faster, naturally within the free market. If you want an example, we can look at coal. Coal was replaced by natural gas because it is cheaper and more effective, more efficient. That is a solution that the free market has capitalized on its own. The government should not be regulating or manipulating the market with taxes, subsidies, cap and trade policies, or any other tool at their disposal. Instead, the government should let energy markets function, allow consumers to choose what best meets their needs, and allow producers to supply those, whatever they may be. The beauty of energy efficiency is that it does not need any directive from a central government planner, because energy efficiency is cost efficiency, and Americans already have incentive to cut costs.
Now proceed to our third question. Given the heightened relations with Russia, how would you approach this issue as president?
You know, my entire life, I've been a very successful businessman. You could even say a hugely successful businessman. I took my father's real estate empire in the great state of New York, grew and maintained it into the brilliant success that it is today. I've spent hours and hours of my professional life in business meetings, formal negotiations, and deal makings of all kinds. With my background in high-stakes negotiations, really no one can be better prepared to discuss American relations with Vladimir Putin and the Russian government in general. But more than my experience in such negotiations, I also have respect for Vladimir. In fact, he's already endorsed me for the office of president, and I think there's a good chance we'll get along very well. While we may disagree on how to run our respective countries, I do respect his gift for leadership and his very strong command of his country. I think it's pretty clear that I will be able to effectively negotiate with Mr. Putin, and perhaps even create a mutually beneficial diplomatic relationship with him. But I think more importantly, I do not have a record of supporting the kinds of policies that have gotten us into such a rough spot with Russia. The fact that we pulled out of Iraq, in essence created ISIS, and constantly intervened in countries like Libya and Syria under the leadership of the current administration is what got us into this trouble with Russia in the very first place. I will not continue such poorly reasoned measures, but will rather pursue a very clear peace through strength foreign policy to mitigate further future difficulties with foreign powers, and use my extensive experience as a successful negotiator to mitigate our current difficulties with the Russians. Because I respect Vladimir Putin and have a great deal of experience in this area and will not continue to send our troops overseas to places they don't need to be, I think it's clear I will be able to solve our current issues with the Russian government.
Unlike Gary Johnson or Donald Trump, I'm really the candidate who has the most experience dealing with foreign affairs as Secretary of State. While I do admit that my relationship with Putin is an interesting one, I do believe that it is one of respect. We've had some tough dealings with one another, but I know that he's someone that you must continually stand up to because, like many other bullies, he is someone who will take as much as he possibly can until you do confront him. We must address the pressure that Russia is putting on our other European allies. Secretary Ash Carter has already addressed that we need to get NATO back working for the common defense. However, we have to do so much more to support our partners in NATO, and we have to send a clear message to Putin that this kind of belligerence will not be responded to. Ultimately, I believe that diplomacy is key, and that we must have some really tough talks to achieve very strong results. Thank you.
There is no clear, straight answer that I can give you on the best means for approaching this issue, and I'm not going to stand up here and try to. I believe that all foreign policy should be a discussion and a debate with Congress, rather than a unilateral executive decision that is sent up and later voted on. However, I will share with you my beliefs on what I would advocate as the best approach. I believe the U.S. should act on behalf of our best interests and be wary of any unintended consequences. It is time for the U.S. to stop policing the world. We simply can no longer afford it. I do not believe the U.S. military should concern itself with any foreign affairs that do not directly threaten national security. That means no more unnecessary wars in the Middle East, no fighting over the Ukraine, and keeping the military here to focus on domestic issues. Rather than exercising military power, I would advocate for diplomacy. Our focus should be on peaceful negotiations, and we should allow and in fact encourage other countries to take on foreign issues. As far as Russia specifically, I believe the situation can be handled peacefully. We need a real ceasefire. We need real negotiations and discussions on how we can solve the issue. Currently, there is no rational path to a more stable Syria that the U.S. can pursue until Russia engages in a process to end the fighting. And I believe diplomacy is the way that we are going to do that. Russia does not have to be our ally, but they should not be a military threat to us either.
Now proceed to our fourth question. How do you plan on handling states whose laws contradict federal laws?
I strongly believe that making America great again relies upon the rule of law. From my early education in a military academy to my years of experience as a successful and very tough businessman, I have learned the importance of the rule of law. If we don't follow laws, we can't be a great country or really much of a country at all. Now, as president, it will be my job to enforce laws at the federal level, and that is a role I intend to take very seriously. However, I do not believe all laws should be enforced on the federal level. A good example of an exception to the rule is same-sex marriage. While I am personally in favor of LGBTQ rights, I do not think it's a federal issue, and I think it would rather be best that it should be left to the states. The Supreme Court has already made their decision on it. However, I do think the states should be able to make up their own minds democratically on this issue. There are some cases where I do not believe states should be able to come out of line with federal mandates. For instance, I do not believe that symbols of racism, like the Confederate flag, should be flown over state institutions. Instead, they should be placed in museums and left as a relic of the past. I will not allow examples of hate speech and racist rhetoric to be flown over state institutions. That is a case where I would clearly not allow states to come out of line with federal law. Another example would be drug laws. I believe that drugs are pouring over our borders and numbers greater and greater by the year, and I will do everything in my power to stop illegal substances from ripping American families apart, regardless of what certain states think about the issue. So when states refuse to comply with federal laws, it is in fact my job to rein them in, and I will be tremendously successful at doing that. At the same time, when states do have leeway under the law and are allowed to make up their own minds, I have no problem with letting the states make their own decisions. After all, it's my job to be commander-in-chief, not babysitter of the states-in-chief. I will do my job when the law requires it, and when the states can make up their own minds, it's theirs to do.
We can see that this issue is extremely prevalent in the LGBT community, the policies of which I have made the forefront of my campaign. There are still too many places in which lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans are targeted for harassment and violence. Unfortunately, states such as North Carolina are doing very little to protect this minority. I pledge to work with Congress to pass the Equality Act, continue President Obama's LGBT equality executive actions, and support efforts underway in the courts to protect people from discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation in every aspect of life. While I was in Senate, I championed legislation to address hate crimes and fought for federal non-discrimination legislation to protect LGBT Americans in the workplace, and I have advocated for the end restrictions that blocked LGBT Americans from adopting children. Ultimately, I will fight for full federal equality of LGBT Americans. I believe that the federal government should hold states to these standards, that these rights cannot be overlooked. Thank you.
I am a strong advocate for the 10th Amendment, which favors states' rights as long as they are not in violation of the United States Constitution. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or the people. And that is what